The Fantastic Four is Marvel's first superhero family, but in this video I'm going to give you the best starting points if you want to read them. Woof woof! Hey guys, it's me Marcus, aka the Mad Dog, and we're back with another video. The Fantastic Four are celebrating their 60th birthday this year, which is just insane to think about because I don't even think I'm going to live that long because I drink a ridiculous amount of energy drinks every single day. But the main 616 universe Fantastic Four I started reading through Mark Millar. Mark Millar's had a really crazy career to the point where a lot of people forget that he was actually writing Fantastic Four. The art was done by Brian Hitch and pretty much when he was at his peak, so you're getting the same collaborative team that did the Ultimates. Admittedly, I haven't read this in over 10 years, so I don't know if it's aged too well, but if it was what could get me into the main universe Fantastic Four, then I think it's still going to be pretty decent. As well, I do vividly remember enjoying the part of this storyline that involved Doctor Doom, and if there's one thing that a Fantastic Four story has to get right, well, it's going to be Victor Von Doom. Next up, and you knew this had to make it onto the list, it's my personal favourite Fantastic Four run, and I also think it's the most underrated. Of course, I'm talking about the issues that were done by Mark Waid and Mike Wieringo. Yeah, I'm still not sure if I'm saying that right. This is a really enjoyable time. I think if you're just looking for a fun Fantastic Four story that will still introduce you to the characters, but won't really take you through an extended origin story or anything like that, this is definitely the one for you, and it's all contained within this one omnibus, which unfortunately I do think is pretty much out of print now. But if you watch Whale Watch, I've been saying for months that might be happening. I think where this story really excels is that it understands the family dynamic that goes on between these four characters. There is one really weird part with the Thing, but again, kind of like what I said for Mark Millar, there's just a great Doctor Doom arc in this. The art is fantastic as well, and you're probably wondering why I'm recommending this so soon. Well, firstly, these aren't in any kind of particular order, and secondly, if people were to click off this video early, I had to make sure that they knew about this run. I am well overdue a reread of this series. I think it's great, and of course, it's written by none other than Mark fucking Waid. Third up, I've got one that's set outside of continuity because it's Fantastic Four Season 1. This line of books, I think they were all original graphic novels, was built for people who hadn't read comics before. So it tells you the origin stories of the characters, but maybe if you don't really like the tone or the way that stories are told in the 60s and the Silver Age style of comics, then this is perfect for you. It was great just to catch you up. It's not really something that's going to blow your mind, but they are still at least fun, short, enjoyable storylines that are going to interest you into these characters and also the wider world. The next recommendation that I've got is Fantastic Four vs X-Men. Now, not everybody gets into comics the exact same way. Maybe you've gone through the route of just looking at a certain character and maybe you really enjoy the X-Men. This is a book that I actually found in my local library, and I read it because I knew a little bit about the X-Men, but I didn't really know too much about the Fantastic Four besides the few issues that I'd read before. And this book's just fun. It's written by Chris Claremont, who's the godfather of the X-Men, and I do often like books like this, and I think it is a great way to cross over from one team of books into another. So if you are the type of person who maybe you've only really looked at the mutant side of the Marvel universe, then this is definitely the one that I'd recommend to help you understand Marvel's first family. Next up, and another run that seems to have been completely forgotten about, is Fantastic Four by J. Michael Strozinski. Yeah, again, another name that is not easy for me to say with this stupid lisp, but this was a run that I actually had to backtrack through because of the fact that I started reading Thor by J. Michael Strozinski, but that Thor book started because of this Fantastic Four run, so then when I read that, I did end up going back and reading the rest of the issues. J. Michael Strozinski, even though everything he hasn't done has been a complete home swing, what I think he does best is bring people into a universe. Even if it's something with established characters, because you can just look at his Spider-Man run, it didn't really go back and tell you another origin story, but it's still really accessible to new readers. His time on Thor's the exact same, and Fantastic Four's no different. Again, yeah, there is a Doctor Doom storyline within this, and I think that is kind of like the get out of jail free card to tell a good Fantastic Four story. But if you're looking for an FF title that isn't often talked about, but is still quite enjoyable, and isn't really going to expect you to know too much going into it beforehand, then this is the one that I think would be great for you. Next up, and possibly the second most important run after Stan Lee, but you know, that's an argument that I don't want to get into, it's Fantastic Four by John Byrne. The name John Byrne just speaks quality to me. He was pretty much the guy during the 80s over at Marvel. Actually, I'm not even going to limit him to just Marvel, because even the things that he was doing at DC were integral to the rest of the comics industry. And his Fantastic Four run is pretty much as important as any of the other books that he's done. I feel like the Mark Waid run must have taken a lot of inspiration from this one, and admittedly I do think that John Byrne can often be quite weirdy, but if you're somebody who did grow up during that 80s time of comics, or maybe that's just the style that you like, then I think that there's going to be nothing better than this one. As well, even though Stan Lee and Jack Kirby created the team, I feel like John Byrne defined who they were for the modern reader. Before this, Sue Storm wasn't really taken seriously, but John Byrne decided to focus on her and give her more of a presence. And he also took the opportunity to make you realise why each member of this team is important. Later on down the run, some of them do leave for for a bit of time, and it is still enjoyable, but just makes you realise why we need those characters in the first place. Next up, you knew this one had to make it on here because it's Fantastic Four by Jonathan Hickman. This is the run that I think would be perfect for people who maybe know a bit about the Fantastic Four, maybe you've seen them in a few other things, and you don't want to sit around and have an origin story or figure out who they all are, then this one would be definitely for you. If I'm being honest, out of these two omnibuses, it's the first one where this story really peaks, but it's still great even when it does split off into two different books. One of the most important recent Fantastic Four storylines happens within this book, and it's also just got that great dynamic. This book's so great they even helped inspire an episode of Rick and Morty. You've also got an A-list tier of artists like Dale Eaglesham, Steve Epstein, and Nick Dragotta, but if you're looking for one of the best modern Fantastic Four runs, then there's not really much else that I can recommend higher than this. It delves very heavily into its science fiction roots, which I think is where the Fantastic Four excels best, because they're not action heroes, they are scientists, and I think that this run is one of the modern ones that understands that best. As well, Marvel is finally reprinting these omnibuses, so if you wanted to jump into this run, now is the best time. You can already pre-order volume 1 over at our sponsor Organic Price Books, and just between you and me, if you use code WOOFWOOF, you will get $2 off your order, and you can use that as many times as you want. So why not treat yourself and definitely make sure that it's pre-ordered, because I'm not too certain how long this one will stay in stock. My next suggestion, and get ready to sharpen your pitchforks because I've got Ultimate Fantastic Four. Now hear me out, because Where to Start was never meant to be a series that's looking at the best runs for a character or a team. It was about me trying to find starting points no matter where people are at in the comic reading journey. And even though I said Mark Millar was the first 616 Fantastic Four writer that I read, he actually did part of the co-writing on Ultimate Fantastic Four. Alongside Brian Michael Bendis, they did a good enough job of introducing people into who these characters are. I'm an Ultimate Marvel apologist. I grew up at the time when this was really hitting its stride, and Fantastic Four was one of those titles that did really entertain me. So I know a lot of die-hard, lifelong FF fans probably aren't going to agree with me on this. I still think it's great for somebody who maybe doesn't know anything about these characters. Actually, one of the members of the Fantastic Four made it onto my list of the top 10 best changes that the Ultimate Universe did. So people can say what they want, but for something that's just enjoyable and open to new readers, I think that this is one of the best starting points. Next up, and the thing that pretty much brought the Fantastic Four back into the limelight, is Heroes Return. Don't get this confused with Heroes Reborn, even though he is made by Jim Lee, who yeah, I really love and I did a video on him. But Heroes Return were when these characters started coming back to form, so you've got just a great list of creators. You've got Chris Claremont, Scott Lobdell, Alan Davies, Salvador LaRocca, you've even got people like Jeff Loeb getting involved in this run. But for a good modern starting point for the Fantastic Four, this is going to be one of the best because they understood that they had to bring new readers back in. This is another one of those that I started reading when I was very young, so it stuck with me quite a lot. A lot that I remember about The Thing, The Human Torch, Invisible Woman and Mr. Fantastic all come from this series. So if you wanted a bit of a longer story, but at the same time you don't know too much about these characters anyway, this is the perfect jumping on point for you. After that, I'm going to cheat, but I tend to do that in near enough every single list that I've ever made, because I've got Silver Surfer. The Silver Surfer is a character who, yeah, is doing his own thing, but he's often so associated with the Fantastic Four. So if you know absolutely nothing about these characters, and maybe you don't want to jump feet first into Marvel's first family, I'd recommend reading something about the Silver Surfer. You've got the original Stan Lee run, but I can also recommend the recent Dan Slott series. Sure, there isn't too much crossover with the Fantastic Four, but at the end of the day, this is just about getting you to read books that you enjoy. And if you learn more about the Silver Surfer, then you can read some of the Fantastic Four stories that involve him, and you can learn about the team through that way. I don't know, maybe that sounds like a stupid idea, but admittedly, I don't really get too many good ideas. I'm taking a risk on my next pick, and I just mentioned him, but it's Fantastic Four by Dan Slott. This is actually another good reason why I mentioned Silver Surfer, just because if you then like Dan Slott's storytelling, you can read his most recent run on Fantastic Four. Admittedly, I've only read the first chunk of this, and it's not the most exciting series, but it is at least enjoyable. And I think it does do a good enough job of giving a new reader a decent enough story. And let's be honest, if you haven't read anything about a character or a team, do you really want to start at the absolute peak? It's just all going to be downhill from there, so admittedly, sometimes we need these type of runs that are serviceable, still enjoyable, but aren't really groundbreaking. This is still ongoing at the moment, which is why I've put it on the list, just in case you want to jump feet first into modern day Fantastic Four. After that, this one's a special mention because I haven't really read too much from this run, but it's Fantastic Four by Tom DeFalco. This was actually a suggestion from a friend when I said that I'm doing a Where to Start on Fantastic Four, so it's actually because of him that this is coming into the list. I think I've probably read 3 issues from this, and I got it from some kind of random comic book pack from about 10 years ago. From what I remember, it was enjoyable, and the hype that this series has got is making me excited in case they ever do release it. There's a few epic collections here and there, but I am hoping that we get an omnibus. Because Tom DeFalco's a great writer, and the 90s is often remembered as a bad time for the majority of comic books, but stuff like Tom DeFalco's run on the Fantastic Four seems to be held high above all of that. So I don't know, if you like the 90s style of storytelling, this one comes highly recommended, but I haven't read all of it to honestly give you my personal recommendation. We're on my final two now, and I've got Fantastic Four Grand Designs. If you've read X-Men Grand Designs, it's pretty much the same thing, but with the Fantastic Four. Books like X-Men and Fantastic Four Grand Designs are built for people who don't know a lot about the history of these teams. They condense decades worth of story into a couple of issues, and I think it's just perfect if you want a refresher. Sure, you can pretty much go back and read the entire history of the Fantastic Four, but if you don't really have the time to do that, then something like this is great just to catch you up on what's going on. And my last pick, of course, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby had to feature on this list at some point. So of course, I have to recommend to you the original Galactus trilogy. This is still really enjoyable today. Like, yeah, maybe Galactus has been neutralized as a threat a little bit, but if you can get into the mindset of a comic book reader who is seeing that character for the first time, then this is just going to completely blow you away. There's a reason why these three issues are some of the most important in all of comic book history. This was uncharted territory at this point, whereas now Galactus is pretty much just like some kind of fill-in character. Admittedly, I think because of the fact that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby did well over 100 issues together, it is a pretty tall ask for any new reader to have to read the entire run, but even though it's still pretty accessible to a modern day reader, yeah, times have changed a little bit, and that's not something I'm really going to get into here. If nothing else, at least the three issues that comprise the Galactus trilogy are really worth your attention. So those are my picks to hopefully help you get into Fantastic Four no matter where you are in your comic reading journey. There's probably quite a few that I've missed out. I haven't read every single issue that's come out for this team in the 60 years since they debuted, so leave your favourites in the description down below, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you didn't, why did you get this far? Definitely subscribe if you're new here and check out our sponsor Organic Price Books. Share this video where you can, because I know there must be a few people who are looking to get into the Fantastic Four. But until next time, whenever that may be, just make sure that you stay safe, stay reading the best books that you can find, and stay mad all you dogs. Woof woof! See you at the next video.